Hi. I'm in the bathroom because I'm about to bleach my fringe, and I'm also going to do the tag to boldly go, wait, fuck, which was made by She Wants the Diction, and I was tagged by Amanda, a bitch poetics, my husband. Yeah, we'll see how this goes. I'm extremely DIY in my approach to dyeing, and obviously to bleaching my fringe, and obviously also because like I only bleach like a tiny part of it. I'm not particularly careful or anything because like it doesn't really matter. It's definitely time to get my bleached fringe back because I don't really feel like myself without it, and everybody thinks that I like have dyed my hair, but my hair is just this colour, but like don't look at it. Just met through it. The first question is Live Long and Prosper, a book that helped with your well-being. If you want to be really deep with it, I think I would go with a book called The Courage to Be Me, a story of courage, self-compassion and hope after sexual abuse by somebody called Nina Barrows. Yeah, which is kind of like a graphic novel, like self-help non-fiction thing. But I would also go with Metabolize of Abel by Clay Add. I guess both of them are kind of like are very different types of books, but they both really helped with me, I guess. Oh my goodness. I haven't done this in a long time. Oh right, okay. Do they not give you gloves anymore? The next book is, oh my god, He's Dead, Jim, which is the last book that you DNFed. And I mean, I've been reading quite slowly / starting more books than I finish recently, so there are lots of books that are like I haven't picked up, or I started but then I didn't continue. But I think the one that I like definitively DNFed is Witch Week by Diana Wynne-Jones, and like it wasn't completely terrible, but I just sort of like didn't think it was worth keeping going. So yeah. This is looking great. The next book is Meld, a book that messed with your head. I feel like everybody's watching gonna be like, why the fuck are you doing it like that? And for this I would pick a book that I finished fairly recently called The Hearing Trumpet by Leonora Carrington, which was just weird. I think, to be honest, like it could also be picked for like a bunch of the other categories, including like problematic book. I chose it for this one because I have more for the problematic one, but also it did sort of mess with my head. I guess like I kind of was expecting it to be weird, and I like enjoy weirdness. The next one is Captain's Log, a book written in epistolary format, and I chose Evelina for this, but I realised that it's actually a more recent book that I read that would fit this too, but it doesn't really matter, because Evelina is quite interesting in that it's, you know, in the time period where like the first novels are coming to fruition, and it was written first anonymously, but then subsequently the author Frances Burney talked about being the author. And yeah, and it's just about like a young woman, I think she's like 17, called Evelina, who is kind of navigating society for the first time, and like the marriage market and romance, and also just like etiquette and kind of like the customs of society, most of which she originally finds hilarious and stupid, and in that way it's quite like a fun exploration of the silliness of a lot of like norms. It's from 1760s, maybe later, can't quite remember. I'm just gonna go get my towel for this. I feel like, I mean, I guess this is just to cover your head, but like, you see, normally I'm even more DIY than this, in that like I just use cling film. Perfect, wonderful, brilliant. So, I'm going to keep answering the questions now. The next is Replicator, a book that reminds you of another book. And I chose a book. Shocking that that happened. And for that I chose the book The Abbess of Crewe by Muriel Spark, which I chose because I just talked about The Hearing Trumpet by Leonora Carrington, which has like an emphasis on like nuns and kind of like weirdness. And this book is also kind of weird and has nuns in it, and it's about like an election being held at this abbey of Crewe. And I did read this quite a long time ago, which is why it's actually on my like to read part of this shelf that I keep it on. But I loved Muriel Spark. I mean, I still love Muriel Spark, but yeah, I haven't read a bunch of her stuff for a while, and I definitely want to reread basically like a whole lot of it, and also continue to read her work. But like, yeah, so this has kind of similarities in that like it's kind of a bit weird and a bit like kooky, and you don't really quite know what's going on, and there's nuns, and it's pretty short, just like The Hearing Trumpet. And I think also the focus on like older women is also something that is in here, if I remember correctly. I feel like people probably have not heard of this book because it's like quite random, and Muriel Spark already is like not a particularly well-known author. But if you've heard of this, please let me know. I'd love to hear. Just, yeah, tell me your thoughts on it if you've heard of it. The next one is Tricorder, a book with multiple protagonists. And for this I chose a book that I read pretty recently, and it was like a 5-star read for me. And that's Disobedience by Naomi Alderman. I wonder if you can all take me seriously looking like this. This book is about a woman called Ronit who's living in New York and whose dad passes away. And he was the Rav of a Orthodox Jewish community in North London. So it's sort of about what happens when that happens. And you know, within that is that there's a lot about Judaism, and I really enjoyed that. And then there's also, we get Ronit's perspective, but we do also get sort of like woven in and out, and also kind of like a more wider, almost like godlike voice of other community members, specifically Esti and David. David is the cousin of Ronit and also a rabbi who was like working under her dad and was being like, I can't remember, like chaperoned, you know, by him. And also Esti, who was connected to Ronit when they were younger, and it's a queer book that's really lovely, and it's also about grief, and yeah, about like sexuality and queerness and life, and like the shape of queer life, and also the shape of queer religious lives, and I really enjoyed it. I don't think it is like a perfect book, but for me, like, it did kind of feel quite perfect. The next question is Time Warp. Sorry, just looking at myself again. A book from your past, and for that I chose Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. This is another one a bit like the Muriel Spark book that's due for a definite reread. This is about a girl called Jeanette who is adopted and into like an evangelical Christian family, and her mother, Mrs. Winterson, is very intense, and it's about her being a massive dyke but also living life. And again, I guess it's also about like the shape of queer life and like queer religious life. Wow, I didn't mean to put these two next to each other, but like I said, I really want to read it. This is the copy that I first read, and so it kind of means a lot to me. Like, these are from my first reading of it. I have no idea what I highlighted. I think it is also quite a lot about books, which is lovely as well. I think I'm probably cheating for the next question, but I really just cannot think of a book that somebody's recommended me recently, except from in a more like general sense, and I haven't read it yet. But I thought I would just go with this book called The People of the Book by Geraldine Brooks, I believe, which was recommended by somebody on TikTok. That was the recommendation. It was in like a list of Jewish books written by Jewish people, and so I guess in response to this person, who's very nice, I will leave a link to her TikTok down below if you're interested. She's called like The Singing Jewess, I think. I would recommend Disobedience by Naomi Alderman. Is that cheating? The next one is Orion Slave Girl, a book with problematic elements, which is many books. But for that I chose The Woman of the Wolf and Other Stories, which is a book I talked about before because I read it fairly recently. And yeah, it's a short story collection. I don't really remember what I said about it, but it is interesting in the context of how it plays around with gender. In a lot of the stories there's like queer stuff, and it's from 1904, so obviously that gives it like a particular fight against even more like normative ideals than there are today. But it also simultaneously, slash almost as part of the way it explores gender variance and non-conformity and sexuality and stuff, and like at the same time as it does that, it also depicts like really problematic characters, and especially around race, and even like the representation of the land and kind of like cowboys, and I also think it's trying to be problematic in some way because it will like also, some stories are from the perspective of bad men, but yeah, there is a lot of racism I would say in this, so yeah. gonna rinse out my bleach and then I'm gonna do the last question. The last section is Kobayashi Yaru, an extremely challenging book. I quite like a challenging book, so I guess I have a couple options, but it sort of depends what type of challenging. I do find quite long books to be challenging just generally, so like I'm reading War and Peace for example, but like I've been reading it for a really long time and I have made headway. I think I've read one book of it, but it's just taken me quite a long time because, yeah, I found it quite overwhelming. But also I had a couple other options, depending on the vibe. One book that I read recently that I found quite challenging was Cain by Jean Toomer, which is, for me, I found challenging in both content and form. It's a lot about racist violence and also gender and sexual violence, and it's also written, I mean, it's a modernist book, and it's written in many different forms, and so some forms I guess were easier to kind of comprehend than others. It is still like a novel, it's just like a composite novel, but even so, like, yeah, I just found it quite difficult to read because it was both like upsetting and it was also quite sort of hard to understand at points. Another book that I did also find quite challenging in terms of meaning, which also kind of I guess means form as well, but also that I definitely I think enjoyed a lot more than Cain regardless, was Whereas by Lady Long Soldier, which is a poetry collection. It's a wonderful poetry collection that really grapples with language in a way, and also simultaneously kind of colonisation, both through and against language, and I remember sort of other forms about indigeneity and care and like mothering specifically. Looking at it now, I kind of want to reread it. But yeah, this is something that took me longer to read. Like, I definitely felt like, you know, there's some poetry that you read and you get, and it's not necessarily superficial, but it is about like images rather than trying to be a poem about an idea or representing an idea, and I feel like this poetry is more like that. But then, you know, I also think that like you could pick this up and enjoy it and get it and stuff. But yeah, it is also a collection that makes you very angry because it is about settler colonial violence, which is another aspect of the challenging part of it. I would definitely recommend it. I think it's also worth going back to and like rereading or trying to read it again if you struggled with it, but obviously also like it doesn't have to be for everyone. I'm gonna wash the rest of my hair now. Great look from me. I'm gonna wash the rest of my hair now and then I'm gonna finish the video so you can see what it looks like dry. Also so that I can see what it looks like dry, because I'm feeling like maybe I washed out the bleach too soon, but I do often feel that way and then my hair dries and I'm like, no, it's perfect. So we'll see. Hey, so I realised that like waiting for this to dry and then filming the ending would mean I wouldn't be able to film in the light, but also I don't want to disturb everybody, so I'm just going to film it whilst this is drying, and I think like the colour should be fine. Also, I'm pretty impressed with how neatly I did it. Also, of course, as I was like tidying away the kit, I found the gloves, which like I already did know that that's where they put them, I just didn't really think about it. I also realised that at the beginning of this I didn't actually get to talk about Star Trek very much, because I think I just like launched into it, which is fine, to boldly go, as they say. But also, I haven't watched the original Star Trek series, but basically Amanda got me into Star Trek Discovery, which is, I think it's the most recent kind of iteration, and I'm 2 seasons in and I really love it. I think it's just really good. Yeah, I think it's good. I'll stand by that, it's good. And I love the characters, and I mean, I low-key just shipped them all together. Polycule, life. Yeah, and in fact I'm thinking about making a video about books and the characters and stuff, so that should be exciting maybe if you're into that content. I just wanted to say like I love Michael Burnham. And I was worried that this video was gonna have like Star Trek as a theme and then I wasn't gonna say that, which is obviously important information. Oh man, I feel so much more like living self like this. I really don't like it when I run out of bleach slash, you know, I mean I like to let the fringe just grow all the way out because I feel like bleaching it a lot isn't a good idea, but yeah, that also means I often end up waiting very long between times and then I feel bad about myself because we love self-esteem. I just wish my hair like grew like this from my head. Anyway, I'm pretty sure like this whole video has not been in focus, but I'm gonna post it anyway because I'm not refilming it because I can't re-bleach my hair. Also, I realised that I should tag somebody, so I'm gonna tag Shannon from That's So Po, and Mari doesn't make videos anymore, but like I'm tagging Mari because I'm a little gremlin. yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say, and I hope you're doing okay and having a nice day, and I will see you later. I really don't know what that was. I will see you later. Bye.